This video is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult a qualified healthcare professional before making any health-related decision.
There is something profoundly unsettling about lying awake in the dark when your body once knew exactly how to sleep. Many seniors describe it as a quiet betrayal. The night no longer feels like refuge, but like a long corridor of wakefulness. Yet, what if this change is not a malfunction, but a biological transition written into the architecture of aging itself? Sleep is not a single, uniform state. It is a carefully orchestrated sequence of stages that cycle through the night: light sleep, deep slow wave sleep, and rapid eye movement sleep. In younger years, deep sleep dominates the early part of the night. This is the phase when the brain produces large, slow electrical waves, when growth hormone is released, when tissues repair, and when the immune system recalibrates. It is the most physically restorative stage of sleep. With advancing age, however, this deep, slow, wave sleep gradually diminishes. The brain simply does not generate those long, synchronized waves as robustly as it once did. This reduction is not random. It reflects structural and neurochemical changes in the aging brain. Neurons involved in sleep regulation lose some efficiency. The production of certain neurotransmitters shifts. Even the sensitivity of sleep-promoting regions in the hypothalamus becomes altered. As a result, older adults spend more time in lighter stages of sleep. Light sleep is easier to interrupt. A distant sound, mild discomfort, or a shift in temperature that would once go unnoticed can now trigger awakening. Alongside these changes in sleep depth, the circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs the sleep-wake cycle, also shifts. This biological clock is housed in a tiny region of the brain known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It responds primarily to light signals from the environment. As people age, this clock tends to advance. Seniors often feel sleepy earlier in the evening and wake earlier in the morning. This is sometimes called a phase advance. It is not insomnia in the traditional sense, it is a timing shift. However, when social schedules or expectations do not align with this earlier rhythm, frustration arises. An older adult may go to bed at 10 p.m., but wake at 4 a.m., believing they have slept too little. Even their total sleep duration is biologically appropriate. Another important factor is sleep fragmentation. Micro-awakenings become more frequent with age. These awakenings may be so brief that they are not remembered, yet they disrupt the continuity of sleep cycles. Instead of flowing smoothly from light sleep to deep sleep and into dream-rich phases, the cycle becomes interrupted. Over time, this fragmentation reduces the subjective sense of refreshment upon waking. The person may have technically slept for 7 hours, yet still feel unrefreshed because those hours were divided into many shallow segments. Hormonal rhythms also evolve. Melatonin, the hormone that signals darkness and promotes sleep onset, tends to be secreted in lower amounts in older adults. Its nightly peak becomes less pronounced. Cortisol, the hormone associated with alertness and stress, may rise earlier in the morning. This hormonal rebalancing further reinforces earlier awakenings and lighter sleep. Importantly, these transformations do not mean that seniors need less sleep in a simplistic sense. While total sleep need may decrease slightly, the greater issue is efficiency. The body's ability to generate deep, consolidated sleep weakens. The experience changes from dense and immersive to more delicate and surface level. Understanding this biology shifts the narrative from blame to awareness. When an older adult says, "I don't sleep like I used to," they are describing a measurable neurological reality. The brain's electrical patterns are different. The hormonal landscape is different. The circadian timing is different. These are adaptive changes associated with aging, not evidence of personal failure or weakness. There is also a psychological dimension to this structural shift. When sleep becomes lighter, individuals become more conscious of being awake. In youth, brief awakenings often go unnoticed because the return to deep sleep is rapid. In later life, returning to sleep may take longer. This increased awareness can create anxiety about sleep itself. The bed, once associated purely with rest, can become associated with effort. Yet within this transformation lies an opportunity for recalibration. Recognizing that sleep architecture evolves allows expectations to evolve as well. Instead of pursuing the exact pattern of sleep experienced at age 30, the goal becomes optimizing the sleep that is biologically realistic at 70. Acceptance does not mean resignation, it means aligning habits with physiology. The aging brain still craves rhythm, still responds to light and darkness, still repairs itself during rest. Its patterns are subtler, more sensitive, perhaps more fragile, but they are not dysfunctional. When we approach sleep changes in seniors with scientific clarity and compassion, we see not deterioration alone, but adaptation unfolding quietly within the nervous system, reshaping the night in ways that reflect the profound journey of the human body through time. Many older adults do not wake in the night because their sleep has simply become lighter. They wake because their bodies are carrying more complexity than before. Aging is not merely the passage of years, it is the accumulation of physiological demands. When night arrives, the body does not suspend these demands. It continues negotiating pain signals, cardiovascular adjustments, and medication effects. Sleep, which requires stability and neurological calm, becomes vulnerable when the internal environment is unsettled. Consider chronic pain, one of the most common disruptors of rest in later life. Arthritis stiffens joints and inflames connective tissue. Degenerative changes in the spine compress nerves. Even mild, persistent discomfort activates sensory pathways that keep the brain partially alert. Pain signals travel through the spinal cord into cortical regions responsible for awareness. They do not simply turn off because the lights are out. Instead, they create microarousals, subtle elevations in brain activity that fragment sleep cycles. The individual may not fully awaken each time, but the continuity of deep sleep is repeatedly interrupted. Over hours, these disruptions accumulate, leaving the person unrefreshed. Cardiovascular changes also influence nighttime stability. As the heart ages, its efficiency may decline. Conditions such as hypertension or heart failure can alter how blood is circulated when lying down. Fluid redistribution in the body can increase pressure in the lungs, leading to shortness of breath when supine. The brain, highly sensitive to oxygen and carbon dioxide levels, responds quickly to even minor fluctuations. It shifts the body toward alertness to protect breathing. This protective reflex, though essential for survival, can repeatedly disturb sleep architecture. Metabolic disorders add another layer. In individuals with diabetes, blood glucose levels can fluctuate overnight. If glucose drops too low, the body releases stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol to correct it. These hormones increase heart rate and stimulate alertness. Even if the individual does not consciously recognize the cause, the brain has already transitioned out of deeper sleep stages. Conversely, elevated glucose levels can cause thirst or frequent urination, prompting awakenings that disrupt the rhythm of the night. One of the most common and often overlooked factors is nocturia, the need to urinate frequently during the night. With age, bladder capacity may decrease, and in men, prostate enlargement can impede urinary flow, creating incomplete emptying and repeated trips to the bathroom. Each awakening to urinate is not just a simple interruption, it resets the sleep cycle. Returning to sleep becomes progressively harder, especially when deep sleep stages are already reduced by aging. What might seem like a minor inconvenience becomes a significant contributor to cumulative sleep fragmentation. Respiratory disorders also play a central role. Sleep apnea, characterized by repeated pauses in breathing, becomes more prevalent with age. These pauses trigger brief arousals as the brain prompts the body to resume breathing. Most of these arousals are not remembered, but they prevent sustained deep sleep. The cardiovascular system simultaneously experiences repeated stress. As oxygen levels dip and rebound throughout the night, the individual may awaken feeling exhausted despite having spent sufficient hours in bed. Beyond the conditions themselves, medications prescribed to manage these illnesses can further complicate sleep physiology. Beta blockers, often used for hypertension or heart disease, may suppress melatonin production. Certain antidepressants alter REM sleep patterns. Diuretics, taken to manage blood pressure or fluid retention, increase nighttime urination if timed late in the day. Corticosteroids can stimulate the nervous system, making it difficult to initiate sleep. Even over-the-counter remedies can contain stimulants that subtly increase alertness. The aging liver and kidneys also metabolize drugs more slowly, prolonging their effects. A medication taken in the afternoon may still exert physiological influence at midnight. Polypharmacy, the simultaneous use of multiple medications, increases the likelihood of interactions that affect sleep regulation. Each substance may individually appear benign, but together they alter neurotransmitter balance in complex ways. Importantly, the body does not compartmentalize these influences. Pain interacts with anxiety. Cardiovascular strain interacts with breathing patterns. Medication effects interact with circadian rhythms. The nighttime brain must integrate all of these signals. When the cumulative burden becomes too high, sleep loses its depth and continuity. Understanding this complexity shifts how we interpret insomnia in seniors. It is rarely a single isolated issue. It is often the visible expression of multiple physiological processes converging during the most vulnerable hours of the day. Addressing sleep problems, therefore, requires looking beyond the surface complaint of, "I can't sleep," and examining the broader medical landscape. Adjusting medication timing, optimizing pain control, treating sleep apnea, stabilizing glucose levels, and managing urinary symptoms are not peripheral strategies. They are central to restoring sleep integrity. There is also a compassionate dimension to this recognition. When an older adult struggles with sleep, they are often navigating conditions that require constant adaptation. Their body is working continuously, even in darkness. The awakenings are not signs of weakness but signals of complexity. The goal is not merely sedation but stabilization, creating an internal environment calm enough to allow the brain to descend once again into the quieter rhythms it still seeks, even amid the layered realities of aging. There is a particular kind of silence that comes at night, and for many seniors, it is not peaceful. When the external world quiets, the internal world grows louder. Thoughts that were manageable during the day begin to echo, memories resurface. Concerns about health, family, finances, or loss circle repeatedly. The body may be tired, but the mind remains alert. This is where sleep becomes not only a biological process, but a psychological negotiation. Sleep requires a subtle surrender of control. The brain must gradually reduce its vigilance. Heart rate slows, breathing deepens, muscle tone softens. For this to happen, the nervous system must shift from a state of sympathetic activation, the fight or flight mode, into parasympathetic dominance, often described as rest and digest. In younger years, this transition can occur almost automatically. But as emotional burdens accumulate over a lifetime, the nervous system becomes more sensitive, more easily activated, and slower to disengage. Stress is not merely a feeling, it is a chemical event. When a person worries, even quietly, the hypothalamus signals the release of cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones increase alertness, elevate heart rate, and sharpen attention. They are designed to prepare the body for action. At night, however, action is not required. The mismatch between chemical readiness and environmental stillness creates internal tension. The individual may lie motionless in bed, yet physiologically they are in a mild state of readiness. Grief is particularly potent in later life. Many seniors have experienced the loss of spouses, siblings, friends, or roles that once defined them. Retirement, though often anticipated, can alter identity and daily structure. The home may feel quieter than before. Nighttime magnifies absence. In darkness, without distraction, the mind revisits conversations, regrets, unfinished stories. This is not pathology, it is the human brain processing change. Yet the timing of this processing often collides with the need for rest. Loneliness also shapes sleep. Social connection regulates emotional stability in subtle but powerful ways. Conversations during the day discharge tension. Physical presence reassures the nervous system. When social contact diminishes, internal dialogue can intensify. The brain, wired for connection, remains alert in environments that feel uncertain or isolated. Even if a person consciously accepts solitude, the neurobiology may remain slightly vigilant. Anxiety about health further complicates the picture. Aging brings greater awareness of bodily sensations. A minor may trigger disproportionate concern. A flutter in the chest may prompt fear of serious illness. At night, when sensations are more noticeable, the mind can amplify them. Hypervigilance toward the body increases cortical arousal. The brain scans continuously for threat, making the descent into sleep more difficult. There is also the phenomenon of conditioned arousal. After repeated nights of difficulty, the bed itself can become associated with frustration. The mind begins to anticipate wakefulness. This anticipation is subtle but powerful. The moment the lights are turned off, cognitive activity increases. The person monitors whether sleep is arriving, inadvertently preventing it. The effort to sleep becomes the obstacle to sleep, From a neurological perspective, emotional arousal activates regions such as the amygdala and prefrontal cortex. These areas remain engaged when processing worry or rumination. Deep sleep, however, requires reduced cortical activity and coordinated slow, wave oscillations across large networks of neurons. Persistent cognitive engagement disrupts this synchronization. The brain cannot easily enter restorative stages while simultaneously analyzing problems. Hormonal rhythms further reflect emotional states. Elevated evening cortisol levels are associated with insomnia. Even slight elevations can delay sleep onset. Chronic stress alters the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, flattening the natural curve of cortisol release. Instead of peaking in the morning and declining at night, cortisol may remain modestly elevated into the evening hours. This blunting of rhythm subtly undermines the biological signals that promote sleep. Importantly, emotional wakefulness does not always present as obvious anxiety. Sometimes it appears as quiet restlessness. A senior may say, "My mind just keeps going." They may not identify specific fears. Instead, there is a persistent mental hum. This cognitive momentum reflects accumulated stimulation without sufficient daytime processing or emotional release. Yet the relationship between emotion and sleep is bidirectional. Poor sleep heightens emotional reactivity the next day. The amygdala becomes more sensitive, stress feels more intense, patience decreases. This creates a feedback loop. Worry disrupts sleep, and disrupted sleep amplifies worry. Understanding this dynamic reframes insomnia not as stubbornness or weakness, but as a nervous system caught in sustained alertness. Addressing it requires more than medication. It involves calming the physiological stress response, creating predictable evening routines, practicing cognitive reframing, and gently redirecting rumination. Techniques that slow breathing can directly stimulate the vagus nerve, enhancing parasympathetic tone. Journaling before bed can offload repetitive thoughts. Structured cognitive behavioral strategies can dismantle catastrophic thinking patterns. Above all, compassion is essential. Emotional wakefulness in seniors often reflects a life fully lived, with attachments, responsibilities, and memories that matter. The mind does not race because it is faulty, it races because it cares. The goal is not to silence this caring mind, but to teach it that night is safe, that vigilance can soften, that surrendering to rest does not mean losing control, and that even in the quiet hours, the body can be trusted to carry on its silent work of restoration. Step outside at sunrise and notice what happens without effort. Light touches the eyes, the brain registers morning, hormones shift, alertness rises. This simple exposure to daylight is not symbolic, it is biochemical. The human body depends on environmental cues to organize time internally. When those cues weaken or become inconsistent, the sleep-wake rhythm begins to drift. For many seniors, lifestyle and environment quietly erode the strength of these signals, leaving the internal clock less anchored and the night more fragmented. The circadian system operates on approximately a 24-hour cycle, governed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus deep within the brain. This cluster of neurons synchronizes physiological processes, temperature, hormone release, alertness, and sleep propensity, according to light exposure. In youth, circadian signals are robust. Social schedules, work obligations, and outdoor activity reinforce daily structure. In later life, especially after retirement, that scaffolding can loosen. Days become more flexible, but times vary. Wake times shift. Without consistent timing, the circadian rhythm loses precision. Light is the dominant regulator. Specialized cells in the retina detect brightness and transmit signals directly to the brain's clock. Morning light suppresses melatonin and sets the phase for the day. Evening darkness allows melatonin to rise. When seniors spend most of their time indoors, particularly in dim environments, the intensity of light exposure may be insufficient to provide a strong timing signal. Indoor lighting is dramatically weaker than natural sunlight. The brain may struggle to distinguish morning from afternoon with clarity. As a result, melatonin secretion may become blunted or mistimed, weakening the contrast between day and night. Reduced physical activity compounds this effect. Movement increases sleep pressure, the accumulation of adenosine in the brain that promotes sleepiness. In active individuals, this pressure builds steadily throughout the day, culminating in a natural desire for rest at night. Sedentary routines slow this accumulation. When the body has not expended sufficient energy, the drive for sleep may feel weaker. A person may go to bed at a habitual time without genuine physiological readiness, leading to prolonged sleep onset. Daytime napping is another influential variable. Short naps can be restorative, but extended or late afternoon naps reduce homeostatic sleep pressure. In seniors who wake early, fatigue may prompt midday sleep. If that sleep stretches beyond 30 to 40 minutes, the brain partially resets its sleep cycle. By evening, there is insufficient pressure to sustain consolidated nighttime rest. The individual lies awake, attributing the problem to insomnia, when in reality the rhythm has been redistributed. Environmental factors within the bedroom also matter. Aging increases sensitivity to external stimuli. Noise that was once tolerable becomes disruptive. Light from electronic devices suppresses melatonin. Temperature fluctuations awaken lighter sleepers. Even the comfort of the mattress can influence micro-arousals. Because deep sleep decreases with age, the protective buffer against environmental disturbances diminishes. The bedroom must therefore become more intentionally structured to support rest. Irregular meal timing can subtly interfere as well. The digestive system follows circadian patterns. Late heavy meals stimulate metabolic activity at a time when the body expects decline. Blood flow shifts toward digestion. Body temperature rises slightly and alertness can increase. Conversely, skipping meals may destabilize glucose levels overnight, leading to arousals. The body seeks rhythm not only in sleep but in nourishment. Social engagement also functions as a timing cue. Conversations, appointments, and responsibilities reinforce daily structure. Isolation or lack of routine reduces these anchors. Without defined morning commitments, wake times may drift later on some days and earlier on others. This inconsistency confuses the circadian system. The brain thrives on predictability. Variability weakens synchronization. Technology introduces additional challenges. Exposure to screens in the evening emits blue, wavelength light that signals daytime to the brain. In seniors whose melatonin production is already reduced, this artificial light can further delay its release. Watching television late into the night, especially without dim lighting, prolongs alertness. The mind remains cognitively stimulated when it should be winding down. Importantly, these factors do not operate in isolation. A sedentary day indoors, followed by a long afternoon nap, and irregular and evening screen exposure creates a cascade of weakened signals. The internal clock receives mixed messages. Sleep becomes lighter, shorter, and more fragmented, not because the brain has forgotten how to sleep, but because it lacks clear instructions about when to do so. Reinforcing circadian cues requires intentional contrast. Morning light should be bright and consistent. Physical activity, even gentle walking, strengthens both metabolic and neurological readiness for rest. Meals should follow predictable timing. Naps, if taken, should be brief and early. Evening lighting should dim gradually, signaling biological dusk. Bedtime and wake time should remain steady, even after poor sleep, to avoid further drift. The human circadian system is remarkably responsive. Even in advanced age, it can recalibrate when given clear environmental signals. Sleep does not occur in isolation from the day that precedes it. It is the culmination of accumulated cues, light movement, timing, and social rhythm. When those cues regain clarity, the night often follows, not perfectly, but with greater coherence, reflecting a body once again aligned with the natural cadence of time. For many seniors, the instinctive response to poor sleep is to fight it, to try harder, stay in bed longer, search urgently for a quick remedy. Yet sleep is not something that responds well to force. It is a biological rhythm that emerges when conditions are favorable. The more we struggle against it, the more elusive it becomes. The hopeful truth is that sleep in later life can improve, not through control, but through alignment, working with physiology rather than against it. Alignment begins with light. Morning sunlight is one of the most powerful regulators of the internal clock. When natural light enters the eyes shortly after waking, it sends a precise signal to the brain's circadian center. This is the start of the day. That signal suppresses residual melatonin and sets a countdown for its release approximately 14 to 16 hours later. For seniors whose rhythms have advanced or drifted, consistent morning light acts as a daily recalibration. Even sitting near a bright window or stepping outside for 15 to 30 minutes can gradually strengthen this timing signal. Physical activity follows closely behind. Movement is not only beneficial for muscles and the cardiovascular system, It deepens sleep by increasing homeostatic pressure. As energy is expended, adenosine accumulates in the brain, enhancing the drive for rest. Exercise also reduces anxiety by metabolizing stress hormones. For older adults, the goal is not intensity but regularity. Walking, gentle resistance training, stretching, or swimming can all contribute to more consolidated nighttime sleep. Importantly, activity earlier in the day tends to reinforce circadian cues, while vigorous exercise too late in the evening may delay sleep onset. Consistency in sleep timing is another cornerstone. Going to bed and waking at the same time each day trains neural circuits to anticipate rest. Even after a poor night, maintaining the usual wake time helps preserve circadian alignment. Sleeping in to compensate may provide temporary relief, but often disrupts the following night. The brain values rhythm over duration. Predictability stabilizes hormonal release and body temperature cycles, both of which influence sleep depth. Pain management requires thoughtful adjustment rather than resignation. Untreated discomfort fragments sleep, yet overuse of sedating medications can alter natural sleep architecture. Reviewing treatment strategies with healthcare providers can identify opportunities to time pain relief more effectively, reduce stimulating medications in the evening, or address untreated conditions such as sleep apnea. Small adjustments in dosage timing can significantly reduce nocturnal awakenings without introducing additional pharmacological burden. Cognitive behavioral strategies offer another powerful pathway. When insomnia becomes chronic, the bed may become associated with frustration. Rebuilding that association involves behavioral retraining. If unable to sleep after a period of wakefulness, rising briefly and engaging in a quiet activity under dim light can prevent the bed from becoming a place of struggle. Over time, this conditions the brain to link the bed exclusively with sleep rather than rumination. Thought patterns also benefit from gentle restructuring. Seniors often worry about the consequence of poor sleep, amplifying anxiety. Learning to challenge catastrophic interpretations, recognizing that occasional wakefulness is not dangerous, reduces physiological arousal. Relaxation techniques such as slow diaphragmatic breathing stimulate the vagus nerve, shifting the body toward parasympathetic dominance. Even 5 minutes of controlled breathing can lower heart rate and quiet cortical activity. Environmental refinement further supports alignment. A cool, dark, and quiet bedroom reduces sensory disruption. Limiting evening exposure to screens minimizes artificial light that suppresses melatonin. Establishing a calming pre-sleep ritual, reading under soft light, listening to soothing audio, or practicing gentle stretching signals the transition from day to night. The brain responds favorably to repetition. Rituals become cues that anticipate rest. Dietary timing also plays a subtle role. Avoiding heavy meals close to bedtime reduces metabolic stimulation. Limiting caffeine in the afternoon prevents interference with adenosine signaling. Moderating evening fluid intake can reduce nocturia, minimizing awakenings that reset sleep cycles. These adjustments are modest individually but meaningful collectively. Perhaps most importantly, alignment includes psychological acceptance. Aging alters sleep architecture. Expecting the same depth experienced decades earlier creates unnecessary tension. When seniors redefine success as achieving restorative rest within the bounds of their biology, pressure diminishes. This reduction in performance anxiety alone can improve sleep onset. The nervous system is adaptable throughout life. Even in advanced age, circadian rhythms can strengthen. Stress responses can soften, and sleep continuity can improve when signals are clear and behaviors consistent. Improvement may be gradual rather than immediate. Nights may vary, yet each aligned habit, morning light, daytime movement, steady timing, cognitive calm, reinforces the body's intrinsic capacity for rest. Sleep is not conquered, it is invited. When we remove obstacles, clarify signals, and quiet unnecessary vigilance, the brain resumes its ancient rhythm. In seniors, this rhythm may be lighter and more delicate than before, but it remains present, waiting for the conditions that allow it to unfold naturally in the quiet architecture of the night.